Welcome to Unfiltered Awareness, a raw and authentic exploration that delves into the realms of consciousness, self awareness, and transformation. Co hosted by Celia Antonio and Lucy Al. Join us as we embark on thought provoking conversation that challenge the norms and expand our understanding. Each episode is an edited conversation where we journey into these topics. We're so grateful you're here. Now let's dive in.
We've been behind the scenes for everyone listening. We've been behind the scenes brewing this conversation where we were talking about, like the male experience within the system of patriarchy, because a lot of us think that, and it is true, a lot of us think that men have it better, and there are all these great things about being a man because we live in a patriarchy where like men have more freedoms, but really if you look deeper, the whole system of patriarchy is not good for either of us, for men, for women, for non-binary people, for anybody, because it's I think Lucy, you were the one that said in a message yesterday that we're like the men are taught to repress their feminine. I think that's from that book where you were talking
Mhm,
about how like
mhm. Yeah.
if a man goes off to war and he's like traumatized from war, like then he's considered a failure as a man. And
That's damaging in so many
yeah.
levels. Um, and I feel like, when we're going to just I want to give you, like, if you haven't heard about me before this podcast, the patriarchy word is not a word I use. I use the P word because I don't like it.
Mhm.
For the reason we're going to talk about today, actually. So I'm going to use this word today because it does include men, because usually patriarchy in the coaching industry, in the feminine led industry, usually our patriarchy is mostly placarded as the men have it all and we don't, which is feels wrong to me. Patriarchy is hurting everyone. Again, different level, of course, but I just wanted to just say that in on a side note. But yeah, I this conversation started really long time ago with
Yeah, I think
but
actually from the first time we talked, when
yeah,
you told
I
me,
think
when
it
you
on
were
your
like
podcast
the
as well
P
when we
word, and I'm
spoken.
like, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I, and I'm like, the P word, what do you mean? And then you like explain that you don't use that word. Yeah.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
this conversation has been brewing for like
It's been brewing for a while.
a while.
And it just started like rekindling together when you've seen in the first episode that we do, we've been talking about the books that we love. And this is a new one that it's not on the list of my five, but it's probably going to be. And one of the first, on the first part of it, she was talking about the face of the trauma. And he was like, what is I talking to? Why are we talking about trauma now when it's Turkey? Give me a second. But and just the she was talking about the phases, how like the study of trauma has increased, and like in the phase 3 of trauma, it's actually realized that because for a very long time trauma was associated for two women and hysteria, and then it just after the
Mm,
war, First World War One, started kind of like people starting to just that's weird. Some people are like some men are shocked, so they call it shell shock at the time, because they were too close to bombarding bombs, which was not the case for some of them. But then, yes, in the term of the patriarchy, reason was in this book, she was sharing that those men had to cope on with it because they had to suck out, they had to like fully resign the feminine sense of like feminine energy. And our human beings, we are masculine and feminine. There is no denying that we both hold, and you don't need to be binary or non-binary to hold that. It's just a thing. We are in nature is the same. We have the masculine and the feminine energy, and they need to be together, or we're not going
mhm,
to work. The
mhm.
earth needs the sun. Without the
Yeah.
sun, the earth is not producing anything. So but yeah, that was the little backstory around that.
Mhm. Yeah. And that goes with something that I heard in a little talk I listened to last night in preparation for this conversation, where they were talking about how in our society, a baby is born, right? And they're, a little boy. And then, like, eventually they learn to, like you said, repress these feminine qualities. So they learn to repress crying. They hear, like, boys don't cry. Or they
Mm.
learn to oppress, being sweet. And little boys are so sweet. All kids are so sweet. They're born super sweet. But the boys are trained to detach from their feminine side in order to, quote, be a man. And it's so
Blend
sad.
in.
Yeah. And
And
that,
not,
like,
yeah,
and that
go ahead.
we're cutting off boys and men from being their true selves and having their authentic expression and truth in order to conform to the system that we've created.
Yeah. Well, there is different layers, and I'd love for I to house also your sense, and I feel like there is like we were talking about patriarchy and like that suppression, which is still lingering, but I feel like there is a little bit there have been a big shift with the rise of the voice of the LGBT community,
Mhm.
LGBT2 plus, I think that's what they are, that's the word currently. um
LGBTQIA plus.
okay, so I lost some letters in the
I love
mix, so
how
my
they
apologies.
have you heard they call themselves the alphabet mafia?
I heard
They have
something
so
about the
many letters.
alphabet, something, yeah.
Alphabet mafia.
I'm still kind of like LGBTQ. That's kind of where I stopped in the letters. I feel like I can't cope up with the
Yeah.
rest of the
You could
letters,
just add
not
a
in the
plus.
people, but
Yeah.
just it feels like it's so long now. And my voice is creaking because I'm sick, but so I'm just wanted to just let you know. I do feel like they've done a huge amount of work because they have been more like the representation has been better, and also they showed that they could be a man and also having that sense of the feminine. And I
Yeah.
want to do just a very side note. It's going to be so 2023 when you're going to hear me saying that now. I just started watching the Ultimatum, the queer edition, and it's I don't know if it's on Netflix. But it next like it's this is supposed it's going to be launched in 2024. It's going to be like what? It's so 2023. But it's just actually interesting to see that lesbians, gay people, like gay women, are actually like are more masc or feminine, and you can see that usually they
Oh,
pair up
yeah.
with men, like men, women, some like some energy, and it's quite interesting to see it this way. So the reason I'm saying that is more coming back to the idea of patriarchy is I really love that this community has really raised awareness and like sharing that we can be different and still be amazing people. So that's where I really love. And you can also express, you can also be you can also be more vocal, you can also be more in tune with your own feminine or your own masculine together. So as a women or men, doesn't matter, or non-binary. I
Mhm.
forgot. I think that's what did you say? I don't know. I'm really sorry if that's the case, if you were hearing us. I
Yeah,
need to
they
get more education.
Yeah, that community has really like pushed the envelope of like questioning our labels and like questioning what society tells us that we need to be. And what I really love is I'm going to be in New York this year when there's the Pride Parade in New York
Mm.
City. And what I love about that space is it's just so welcoming and so like everyone is just so happy to be able to be themselves freely out in the streets when that was not always the case. And I think that everyone, no matter what their sexual identity is, can really like learn from that and see like because like even for us, we both identify as women, right? And even us, we can be susceptible to things that we see online where people are like, oh, being in your feminine is this, being in your masculine is this. No, I get to decide what being a woman is for me and what being
Mhm.
in my feminine is for me. And that's something that I've only recently come into.
Mm.
And the way I came into that was that I noticed that, leaning into being in my feminine gave me this sense where I was like doing a lot of relaxing and not doing like the action steps I need to take as a business owner because I'm like, oh, that's me being in my masculine. That's bad.
Oh my God, I've been there as well. So I love what you can we just talk about that right now? Okay,
Yeah.
I love this, and I know that I feel like any like I'd love for having your point of view as well, but I do believe we probably have the same sense. And I've been like that. Like I've been the more in the masculine. I didn't know about those names, so I'm just going to use those words now. But like at the time, I didn't know. I was just doing business, and I was doing business the way it's been taught for very long time, like centuries and centuries. That was more masculine, and the doing and the like the word like for me, I call it the grinding and hustle culture.
Mm, yeah.
And at some point, this is not sustainable. So I totally crashed, and I realized that was not working for me. And most people, like now, I feel like it's changing, but like a lot of people at the time, when they go through the burnout and they were in business, they usually close the business and that was not for me. That was
Mm,
not business was not for me. And then and they go back to doing something else, finding a job or whatever that feels this better for them.
that's so sad.
And I didn't want to leave the business. I really was like, there's something I felt within myself. There was another way, but I was like, I haven't been taught it, so I just don't know. I'm like, and I'm being other loss. So then I definitely got to the crashing, the relaxing, and the whole like yeah, na, 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 na. And I feel like it's very necessary for us to go through like frolicking. That's the like
Yeah.
it's like the frolicking.
Frolicking. Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm in
frolicking.
flow.
I'm in flow. And the thing is, I feel like then when you go to the full feminine, like the full real surrendering, you actually realize that you do need the sense of masculine. You do need sense, but the thing is not in the masculine of the bro masculine of like let's go and do and hustle. No, it's actually using the masculine of like what is the masculine good, what is the best of the masculine of like masculine is really good at creating system. The masculine
Hmm.
is really good at supporting your action. So you are in your feminine into like very loose, maybe a day that is very loose of you have no client, no calls, and you're really kind of tuning with yourself, really kind of channeling. For me, I'm channeling with my spirit guides, so channeling through my spirit guides to see what I want. But the thing is, funnily enough, one of my guides it's a masculine energy, and it's my business entity. So it's just like when I come to him like with a
He
like
sounds
I
hot.
get all I get the I they have names as well, but that like have the feminine coming through me, and I'm getting all the channels of the what I'd love to create, and then the masculine said this is what needs to be done. And it's not like it needs to be done like very sorry. It's just like let's just follow in the simplicity, which is the feminine. Simplicity is the feminine, is the flow. And then you still need like you still have some little actions to activate to do it, but you don't have to do it like um for my all my generators, I love you, but I'm going to use a word like for human design. If you ever heard about that, you don't need 100 steps. If you can do 10, I'm fine with it. It's just like generators usually love to have 100 steps, and I'm like, this is way too much for me. My whole body is just
Yeah.
crushing, and I'm kind of discern the burnout as well. My apologies.
It sounds like I'm losing my voice too.
Hmm.
It sounds like
Interesting.
it's like a process where you get to give birth because
Mm.
you relax into your feminine and you surrender, and in that surrender you eventually give birth to an action step. And I caught
Yeah.
myself wanting to crack jokes as you were sharing. Like, I don't know if you heard me, but
Crack jokes,
when you
please. I love being like being crack joked.
when you shared your business entity, I'm like, he sounds hot.
He is. He's very hot, and his name is very hot as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
But he has no like physically has does not have a physicality. Like you cannot really see it, but it does come in the form of a human, but it has no body, so it's just more in the aura, the energetic field that
Hmm.
you can feel. But yeah, it's interesting when you said about birthing. I love that. I love
Yeah.
that.
And maybe with like where we're at right now collectively, from what I've been seeing in, the content that I see, I know we all have different algorithms. There has been a rising lately in divine feminine like power and energy, and even with music, like there's I don't know if you know the song WAP from Cardi B came out in
No,
2020.
no.
I don't know if I can say what WAP stands for on this podcast. I don't know if we want to keep the
You?
podcast clean.
I will put it explicit on this one if needed.
Okay.
So yeah, yeah, yeah.
So it's a
Mm.
rap song where she says wet ass pussy. Like that's what she's singing about.
All
And
right.
so it's like a different, like there's like been a shift, and like I think all of this time that's been happening where the feminine movement has been getting traction and women are getting more rights and all these things is going to birth, and I think it's already born and it's already an infant, this new way, this new like I guess possibility for masculine beings or testosterone based bodies to be able to be. Like, I feel like there's definitely a lot more circles where men are coming together. I've seen this online where like men come together and, talk about their feelings and, hug things out and, really take the time to be with their emotions in a safe place with supportive men and be in that like brotherhood. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I feel like a lot of men don't have enough brotherhood because typically men are like, working a lot or they're,
Yeah.
providing for their family, and so they don't usually have the time to meet new people. They'll have their friends that they like went to school with or met at work or things like that. So and learning how to make new connections and create a brotherhood tribe is definitely a piece that requires leaning into the feminine, because the feminine is about community and about
Mm.
connection and relationship, whereas the masculine I feel like is a little bit more independent. I
Mm.
don't know. What do you think about that?
I love what you shared, and I keep my mind keep reminding me of, everything is synchronicity. I To me at least, and you have the womb awakening, you have the book, so you might have read that
Yeah.
part, but keep coming to me when you were sharing that. And I know I'm talking a lot of books, but there is so many resources in books. And I opened it randomly because they encourage to do that. So like you take the book and you open and it actually fell in straight at the beginning of a chapter, which was that's interesting. And it was
Hmm.
talking about shamanic birthing and
Mm.
how actually we used to birth in the very, very ancient time, that women were going into special places, usually where is the two rivers was joining, because that was the more fertile place of the world, and they were going into caves
Uh-huh.
with other women, but men were with them as well. And in some culture, the men were actually receiving the same treatment as the mother that was giving
Huh.
birth. So it was getting massage, it was getting the care that we care for
Only
women,
the
that is
father or like all the
the
men?
father, the
The
person,
father. Okay.
the person that conceived it with
Yeah.
the person that, like, the father, yeah, and that was really interesting to see it this way. And in the book they were saying this is where we are going, because in some, so like in the 50s, the men were fully removed from birthing, with hospital and everything. Men were not allowed in the room for their wives at the time, excuse me, to come and birth, to be there for the
Hmm.
birth,
I didn't know
because
that.
men were not supposed to be that. It's a women's stuff. And
Yeah.
this is where it was talking about it's another subject, was talking about the new earth, which I have a very special, have opinions around that. As I have for everything. Anyway.
That's why we're here. That's why we have a podcast.
Exactly. But yeah, I love what it was sharing, and it's page 261, like the chapter around the page 261. So if you want to have a look, but it was saying that this is where kind of like this is where we're going to really melt and remove the separation between men and women, because if we actually realizing that it's not just a rite of passage of the mother, it's actually a rite of passage for the parents
For
to
sure.
give birth to the child,
Yeah.
and involve them in that level of like they're not holding the hand, but they're actually fully part of the process. It was going to be changing, and I know that I sent that to a friend of mine that I told you about, that she free birthed. So
Mhm.
if you don't know what it is, free birthing is actually going through pregnancy, not being followed by any GP or like doctors, or going to any hospital appointment, or even any doula. I think she had a doula. She had a contact with a doula, but she free birth with only her partner, just
Yeah.
herself and her partner. And that must be a very, very different way of birthing. Just being
Yeah.
you and relying only on your partner, and your partner realizing how much is actually have to be involved, because they only two of you, and she cannot do much more than delivering the baby. And I sent that to her, and she's like, this is exactly, like, I'd never read about this book, but this is exactly my intention when I birthed my child. And it was very interesting to see that this is actually very ancient. We're just coming back to, I feel like we are coming back to the resources that we were stripped of. And it feels like it's men and women. That's the reason we were talking about patriarchy, is
Yeah.
women had, actually, you know what? We actually had time, guys. So we were actually going to invite you to come to the next episode. Ha, ha,
Okay.
ha.
Thank you for tuning in to Unfiltered Awareness. If you enjoy this episode and you want to support the podcast, you can do so by rating and reviewing us on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever it is that you listen to podcasts. You can follow our podcast YouTube channel, which is linked below. You can also find us individually on Instagram. You can find Lucy at callme.lucy, and you can find Celia at selfexpressedbabe. Both of those are linked in the caption below. Thank you again for listening, and we will see you next time.